Hi everyone, thanks for coming or for coming back. I'm Jillian, also known as Jillian Jigs, and today I'm going to share with you my recipe for cherry strudel. So to start, you're going to go ahead and gather all your ingredients, just the dough for now. And quick note, all the measurements are down below in the description, so check that out if you're planning on making this. So for the dough, you're going to start with a large bowl into which you're going to combine your flour and your salt. Then you're going to add your egg, your oil, and your warm water. Do make sure that you use warm water here because it just helps with the elasticity and the extensibility of the dough, so it'll make your job a little easier later on. So go ahead and mix everything together with a spatula or a spoon until it starts to come together, and then you can switch over to using your hands. And then once it is together enough that you can, you're going to turn it out onto a clean surface and start kneading. Now we are going to start the long process of developing the gluten in the dough. So what you're going to do is you're going to knead it 5 or 6 times, and then you're going to repeat back and forth between kneading 5 or 6 times and violently slamming the dough against the counter. About 10 times in a row, and then back to kneading. Overall, you want to do about 100 slams of this dough against the table, just to make sure that your dough will stretch really easily when you have to go to stretch it. So you can't overdo this really. What you're looking for is that your dough is nice and soft and really smooth at the end, and that's how you'll be sure that your dough is going to stretch really easily later on. So once you're happy with your dough, you're going to go ahead and divide it in two. This recipe is to make 2 strudels. I wouldn't really suggest cutting it in half and making one, because especially if it's for your first time, you want to sort of have a practice strudel. And also if you make it with the full recipe, then you'll just have 2 strudels. And I don't think anyone has a problem with that. So go ahead and divide it in 2 and round each half into a nice little ball. And then you're going to grease it all around with oil and then put it on a plate covered with a hot bowl. So the way I heat up my bowl is that I take preferably a glass bowl and I fill it with boiling water. I leave the water in there for 2 or 3 minutes, and then I dump the water out, give it a real quick wipe just to dry it off a little, and then I tip the bowl upside down over the dough. And just all the heat and humidity in there is also going to help with the extensibility of the dough later on. So you're going to set your dough aside and let it rest for half an hour while you work on your filling. For the filling, you're going to start with a pot in which you're going to combine the cherry juice and the sugar. Put it over medium-high heat and let it come to a boil. While your cherry juice is heating up, you're going to go ahead and whisk together your lemon juice and your cornstarch. Then once your cherry juice is boiling, you're going to slowly stream your starch mixture into your cherry juice while whisking constantly. What you want to see is that your cherry juice mixture is going to dramatically thicken, and enough so that when you lift your whisk out of the pot, you should be able to bring a nice glob of cherry mixture. And also it's going to turn sort of a clear color. When you first add the cornstarch, it's going to be sort of cloudy, and then it'll go nice and clear, and that's how you know it's done. So once that is nice and thick, you're going to go ahead and take it off the heat and add it into your cherries along with your lemon zest. Now, if you're using frozen cherries like I am, do make sure that your cherries are fully drained, that there's no more moisture sitting in there, because if this mixture is too wet, then all your layers in your strudel are going to stick together and it'll just be one layer. That's not what you want. So you want to make sure that you don't have any extra moisture in there. So set your cherry mixture aside, and we are going to go back to working on our dough. So you're going to spread a tablecloth out on your surface. This doesn't have to be big or anything. You want it to be at least 2 feet by 3 feet, but do make sure that it's not a tablecloth that you care about, because it's going to get a little bit messy. Speaking of which, you're going to go ahead and dust your tablecloth with a nice thin layer of flour. And then you're going to take your dough, and you can go ahead and dust your dough on each side with a little bit of flour as well. And then if you like, you can start by rolling this out a little bit with a rolling pin. I usually like to just go straight to stretching with my hands, but what you're going to do is you're going to stretch this dough as thin as possible. You want it to be relatively rectangular, I would say about twice as long as it is tall. I generally like to go for about 14 inches wide and as long as I can get, but you can go different sizes. Mine really just depends on how big my pan is. So you're going to stretch it as thin as you can go, being careful not to rip it. If it does rip, make sure that you try and pat your holes right away so they don't get too big, but as much as possible, try not to rip it. Once you've got your dough as thin as you can go, just stretching it in your hands, you can go ahead and lie it down on the tablecloth and stretch it out a little more if possible. If not, that's totally fine. But again, you want it to be about 1 foot wide by 2 feet tall. So once you're done with that, you can go ahead and take your melted butter and you're going to spread half of this on your pastry. If you're scared that you're going to rip it by like painting it on, then just go ahead and drizzle and splatter it on, sort of Pollock style. Then you're going to go ahead and sprinkle your almonds on top of that. So after your almonds and your butter are on, you're going to go ahead and put half of your tray filling in a nice line along one of the short sides of your pastry. And I like to just pull the short edge up over top of it to sort of contain the cherries all in there. Now what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and bunch up the tablecloth at the side where the cherries are, and you're going to roll the strudel onto itself as many times as you can. Once it's at the end of its roll, you can go ahead and use your hands. I like to seal it down while it's still sitting there so that the insides don't become the outsides while I'm lifting it up and putting it onto the parchment, and then again lifting the parchment and putting it onto the tray. Now you're going to fold over those little empty ends to underneath the strudel, and you're going to brush the whole thing again with melted butter. Now this whole thing is going into the oven at 390 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 to 40 minutes. What you want to see is that it's just a nice even golden brown on top, and it'll look really puffed, like it's full of air. So after you take it out, you're going to let it cool slightly, and then once it's cooled, you're going to go ahead and just generously dust it with powdered sugar. So much powdered sugar. All the powdered sugar. And then you're done. That's it. You can go ahead and cut it open and see all the beautiful layers inside that you've made, and you can enjoy your strudel. Anyways, thank you for coming and watching along. I hope you make some strudel, and I'll see you next time. Bye.